Today I'll be demonstrating how to complete a crochet project using single crochet. As you can see here, single crochet creates a good solid cloth, and it's great for things like a dishcloth, a scarf, or you can even combine squares of single crochet to make a blanket, placemat, or scarf. All you need to make a single crochet project is a ball of yarn. Depending on the project that you're making, will determine what yarn is best. You'll also need a crochet hook. Check your pattern to be sure you have the right size crochet hook. The first step to completing a crochet project is to make a slip knot. In order to make a slip knot, we want a pretty long tail. We want to pass the tail end on top of the ball end of the yarn. Then we're going to take the tail end of the yarn and tuck it up through the loop and pull tight. This creates a slip knot. If you've done your slip knot correctly, you should be able to place it on your needle and pull on the tail end to tighten onto your hook. It's important that you don't tighten too tight. You want it to still be loose where you can move that loop around on your crochet hook. After you've created a slip knot, you can begin to chain the number of stitches that you're going to begin your crochet project. Today I'll be demonstrating a sample of 10 stitches, but if you're doing a project like a dishcloth, you would chain 41 stitches. Since I'm doing a square that's 10 stitches wide, I'm going to chain 11 stitches. You always want to chain at least one more than the stitches you need for your project. In order to crochet, you can drop the tail end of your yarn. You want to be holding the ball end of your yarn, which means the yarn that's attached to your ball of yarn. In order to hold the yarn, you want to sort of lace it between your fingers just to provide some tension. And you can hold the tail of your yarn in between your thumb and the rest of your fingers. Use your index finger to wrap around the ball end of the yarn. In order to chain, you're going to take the yarn that's attached to the ball, you're going to wrap in front of your crochet hook, and then you're going to hold your slip knot. You're going to turn your needle down and then pull through that loop. All right, let's do that again. When you're creating your chain, you don't want it to be tight, so it's good after every stitch to move the loop around on your needle. All right, holding the stitches you've completed, you're going to take your yarn, wrap it in front, move the hook towards you, down, and pull through, and then back onto the needle. Let's do that a few more times. So you're going to wrap the yarn in front of your needle. You're going to rotate the needle towards you, down, and pull through, back onto the needle. Wrap the yarn around the needle, rotate towards you, down, and pull through. Back onto the needle. Wrap the yarn around the front of the needle, rotate the needle down, pull through. Wrap the yarn around the needle in front, rotate the needle towards you, down, and pull through. So you can see what we're doing here is we're wrapping the yarn in front below our hook. We're rotating towards us and down to catch the yarn in the hook and using that hook to pull through. You can count the number of stitches that you have by the number of V's that you see. Each of these V's is a stitch. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 stitches right now. So I'm going to go ahead and do 8, 9, 10, and an extra chain. Now if you're completing a dishcloth or a wider project, you want to continue chaining. When you've chained the correct number of stitches for your pattern, you're going to begin your foundation row. In order to complete your foundation row, you're going to skip the first stitch, which is this stitch here. Remember, every stitch is a V, so our first V is our first stitch. We're going to insert our crochet hook into our second stitch. You can see each stitch has a bottom and a top. You're going to insert into the top of your second stitch. Okay, so let me show you that again. So we've got the first chain. You can see the V there. You can see our second V there. We're going to insert our crochet hook into that V, catching the top loop. Then we're going to complete a single crochet by wrapping the yarn around the hook, rotating the hook towards us, down, and pulling through, and back on the needle. So you see now you've got 2 loops on your needle. With crochet, you always want to get back to a point where you have 1 loop on the needle. So in order to get our extra loop off and complete our single crochet, we're going to wrap around our needle in front of the hook, rotate towards us, down, and pull through both loops. So let's do that again. We're going to do this on every stitch of our foundation chain. So we're going to insert into the next V, which is here. We're going to insert in. We're going to wrap around the front, rotate down, and pull through. So we have 2 loops. We're going to wrap around and pull through both loops. Our next stitch, we're going to insert, we're going to wrap around, pull through, wrap around. Wrapping around the needle is called yarn over, and pull through both loops. So we're going to insert into our next stitch, wrap around, pull through 1, wrap around, pull through 2. So we're going to go in our next stitch, wrap around, pull through 1, wrap around, pull through 2. We're going to go into our next foundation stitch. I'm going to wrap around 1 and wrap around 2. If you need some more practice wrapping the yarn around the needle and pulling through, go back to the beginning of the video and try a few more times. If you feel comfortable doing that, you can continue working the foundation chains of your project. You're going to go into the next stitch, wrap around once, and wrap around and pull through 2. Next stitch, wrap around and pull through 1, and wrap around, pull through 2. You always want to look for the next stitch by looking for where you still have a V. In the stitches that you've worked, you'll see that it spreads out to where it's no longer a V. It's more of a gap there. So you want to go into the next V. Crochet and pull through 2. And the next V, which is our last, we're going to crochet, pull through 1, and pull through 2. Now you've reached the end of your row. You can double check that you've done it correctly by counting your stitches. Starting with the stitch we just worked, you count the V's. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right. So to begin our next row, again, I've done 10 stitches on this sample. If you're doing more stitches, you'll complete all of them. At the end of the row, double check your stitches by counting the V's. And to begin the next row, you're going to chain once by wrapping the yarn over the needle, rotating towards you, down, and pulling through. So this creates an extra chain on the end to provide space for each row. We're going to work back the next row. This is our foundation row that we've just completed. With every other row that we complete, we're going to go into both loops of the V. So you can see here there is a front loop and a back loop, or a bottom loop and a top loop. You'll hear it referred to as both, but what's important is that you go in below both loops. So you've got both sides of your V on your needle. You're going to wrap your yarn in front of the needle, rotate down, and pull through your V. Then put your stitch back on your needle. You've got 2 loops. So we're going to work that second loop by yarning over and pulling through. So that creates the first stitch of our next row. So let's do the next stitch. We're going to go in below both legs of the V, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through both. Next V, yarn over, pull through the V, yarn over, pull through both loops. I like to turn my crochet towards me every time so that I can see that V. As you get better, you'll be able to insert the needle from this angle. But while we're still practicing, it's a good idea to always turn your work towards you. Insert into both legs of the V, yarn over, pull through. Yarn over, pull through both. So now we're going to go ahead and finish this row that same way. If you need more practice, go back in the video, watch a few more times, and continue to practice. While you're working your stitches, you can pause the video, finish your row to the last couple, and then come back and play the video here. Now, to finish this row, we're going to insert into the stitch, complete a single crochet, and our very last stitch, and complete a single crochet. So again, you can count to check your stitches. So we've got the stitch we just completed, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. And you can see that chain stitch that we made on the end just becomes the edge of the work. So I'll show you how to begin another row. To begin a row, we're simply going to chain 1 stitch. Then we're going to skip the first V, go into the second V. So that's how we'll begin every row. From here, you can continue to work your rows. Insert in the V, pull through both. Insert in the V, pull through the V, pull through both. So go ahead and finish your row. I'll show you how to begin a row one more time. You want to be sure that you're not creating your stitches too tight, because then it'll be very hard to complete new stitches. So to begin a new row, you're going to chain 1, skip the first chain, so you're going to skip your first V, insert into the second V, and complete a single crochet. So the single crochet stitch is inserting into a V, pulling through, and then pulling through both loops. So that's your single crochet stitch. In a pattern, you'll see it referred to as SC. That's the abbreviation in most cases. So from here, you can go ahead and make your project the length that you would like it. Check your pattern. If you're completing a dishcloth, you're going to make your project about 9 inches. Alright, I'm completing the last row of this sample so I can show you how to bind off and weave in the ends. Your project will be wider and longer. For example, if you're completing a dishcloth, your project is going to be about 40 stitches in width and 9 inches in length. Once you hit the point where you're completing your last row, you're going to chain, begin working the second stitch, and work your last row. With crochet, your live stitch, meaning the stitches that can still unravel, is the one stitch that's on your needle. So if you make a mistake or if you drop your project, it's important to know that without the hook in that loop, it can unravel and the stitches can pull right out. So if you happen to do that on accident, or you need to pull some stitches out because you've made a mistake, you can pull back your stitches and just insert your crochet hook into that live stitch. As long as that live stitch is on your hook, then you're good to go. Okay, so once you've reached the end of your last row, I'm going to work this last stitch by pulling through 2, and to cast off or bind off on a crochet project, all you need to do is give yourself a little bit of a tail, snip your yarn, and you're going to pull your yarn through your last stitch and pull tight. So finishing a crochet project is fairly easy. So here you've got your slip knot and your cast on edge. You've got the width of your project, which is the number of the stitches. And then you've got the length of your project, which for our washcloth is going to be 9 inches. Once you've completed your project and you have done your cast off, you're going to use a tapestry needle. This needle is not very sharp. It can still poke you, but it's a pretty blunt edge. And the opening is large enough to accommodate a large piece of yarn. So you're going to thread, you can use a needle threader, but you're going to thread your yarn through your tapestry needle. And in order to finish your project, you just want to work in this tail end so that it doesn't come unraveled for some reason. You can do that by just working back and forth through the openings. That's one method. You can do a couple and pull through. Okay, so I'll show you that again. You can just go in and out and pull through. So once you've done that with a few stitches, then you can go ahead and trim your yarn. Be careful not to cut your project, but you can go ahead and trim your yarn close. And you can do the same with your cast on edge. And you can go in and out and pull through. And you just want to be sure to do that a couple times, and then you can snip that edge as well. So then what you have is a much larger project than what I have here. So now you have a completed single crochet square.